The battle came without a warning. 1 minute, the skies above Mars Base Alpha were calm, filled with satellite beacons and quiet signals. The next, the alarms screamed, red lights flashing across every corridor. No one knew where the ships came. From black as the void, silent as ghosts, moving faster than anything the humans had ever seen before, Captain Raina Pierce stood at the command deck, eyes locked on the chaotic radar screen. She didn't blink as the enemy ships closed in, moving like predators that already knew their prey was doomed. The base's defenses responded fast. Lasers lit up the sky. Railguns fired, but nothing slowed the attackers down. "They're not trying to talk," said Lieutenant Dax. "They didn't send a message. They didn't demand surrender. They just opened fire like they already hated us before we even met them." Raina didn't answer. Her heart was racing, but her mind stayed sharp. Years in the service had trained her for pressure. But this was something else. This wasn't war, it was extermination. Whoever these aliens were, they weren't here to fight for land, for resources, or even revenge. They were here to erase humanity like a mistake. The control room shook violently as a plasma blast hit the eastern shield tower. Sparks flew from the ceiling, and one of the communication techs screamed as a console exploded beside him. Raina ignored the noise. She turned toward the medical officer, who was already checking casualty reports. But something strange appeared on his screen. "Captain," he said slowly, "we have wounded soldiers coming in from the surface, but it's not just plasma burns or radiation. Their blood's reacting strangely. Their DNA is changing, adapting, and fast." Raina blinked. "Explain." The medical officer zoomed in on the scan. "It's like their cells are rewriting themselves to resist alien weapon energy. As if they've seen this type of attack before. But that's impossible. We've never met this species, at least not officially." Meanwhile, in orbit above Mars, the alien warfleet continued its brutal assault. Aboard the flagship of the enemy, a tall, cold-eyed figure watched Earth's defenses through a translucent screen. His name was Commander Threx of the Kolar Dominion, and his voice was colder than space itself. "Begin surface cleansing. Burn their roots. Leave nothing that can grow again." His second-in-command, a four-armed strategist, hesitated. "Sir, our scans show unusual resistance. Their biology. It's reacting unnaturally. Almost as if I know what it is." Threx snapped. "That's why we strike now, before more of them awaken." Back on Mars, Raina's team fell into survival mode. The aliens weren't just targeting military targets. They were hitting water supplies, hospitals, even schools. But the worst part wasn't the destruction. It was the feeling that the enemy knew humanity better than humans knew themselves. Raina pulled up an old file from deep within Earth's restricted archives, labeled only with red warning signs and clearance codes above her rank. She bypassed the system anyway. What she found sent a chill down her spine. There had been encounters before, tiny ones, disguised as rogue signals, strange comets, unexplained illnesses. Incidents over decades, centuries even, each dismissed. But someone knew. Someone had been hiding the truth. Human DNA wasn't just organic code. It was something more. It had layers, encryptions, locked sections that behaved like living programs. The scientists called it the core, a hidden part of the genome that responded only under extreme conditions, like war. Or extinction. Raina looked up at the medical officer. "Run full tests on all wounded soldiers. I want to know how far the DNA has shifted. Compare it to baseline Earth genome. If this is what I think it is, we're not just fighting to survive. We're waking something that should have stayed dormant." Outside the base, a young engineer named Melo dragged a wounded soldier behind cover as alien drones swept the ruins. One of the machines aimed at him, but before the blast hit, the soldier on the ground reached up, eyes glowing faintly with gold, and tore the drone apart with his bare hands. Milo screamed. "What the hell was that?" The soldier didn't respond. His breathing was heavy, his skin shimmering under the light. Not human anymore, not fully, but something else. Something stronger. On the Kohler flagship, Commander Threx watched the footage in silence. He turned to his second in command, voice low and filled with dread. "We were too late. The gene fire is active. Earth has awakened. But how?" The officer asked. Threx's eyes narrowed. "Because someone broke the seal. Someone down there read the old records. That's the one mistake we feared, in the shadows of Mars." As fires burned and the night sky filled with wreckage, a new kind of human stood among the ruins. No longer just survivors. No longer just victims, but something older. Something forgotten, and the galaxy had every reason to fear them. Asterisk. The smoke had not cleared when Milo carried the glowing soldier into the underground lab. His hands shook, his voice cracked. But his fear wasn't about the aliens outside. It was about the man he had just seen rip through metal with his bare fingers. Reyna stood waiting, surrounded by stunned scientists and medics. The soldier was placed on a stretcher. His body twitched, muscles pulsing as if his cells were learning to breathe in a new way. No one spoke. The scanner buzzed and beeped, in ways it never had before. "This isn't mutation," one of the doctors whispered. "It's instruction. His DNA is receiving ... commands." Reyna stared at the soldier's readings. She had seen strange things in war, but nothing like this. According to the scan, the man's body was rewriting itself at an incredible speed. Not randomly, not broken structured. As if something ancient had just been unlocked. Milo stepped back, his voice quiet. I saw his eyes. They glowed before he crushed the drone. He didn't even aim, he knew where to hit it, like ... His body understood it better than he did. The doctors worked quickly, injecting stabilizers and logging data. But the machines were struggling to keep up. The human body wasn't meant to evolve like this, and yet somehow it was. Reyna turned to the lead biologist, a woman named Dr. Kess. "What's inside us, Doctor?" Dr. Kess took a breath. "Something that was never meant to be triggered. We've all got it buried deep inside. A locked section of the genome, inactive for thousands of years. Until now." "But why now?" Kess looked at the readings again. "Because someone out there is using the exact frequency to wake it up. The attack wasn't just to destroy us. It was designed to light this fire." Reyna felt the weight of the words. They weren't at war by accident. They were the target of something ancient. Something planned. And their DNA, what they thought was simple biology, was the true battlefield. Meanwhile, in orbit, Commander Threx stood in a dark chamber. Dozens of Kohler leaders had joined him via hologram. All of them watched the same footage. A soldier on Mars tearing apart a drone, his body glowing like fire under the skin. "This is not evolution," one of the leaders growled. "This is code, hidden code." "You were right, Threx. The humans carry the ancient line." Another added, "The same pattern from the Forbidden Wars, but they were wiped out. How did this species inherit this spark?" Threx's voice was low. "Because someone made sure it would survive. Someone hid the fire inside them. This planet, this species, was never primitive. They were dormant. Back on Mars, the base's outer wall finally collapsed. Alien troops poured in, machine-like beings with burning spears and blade arms. Screams echoed through the corridors. But this time, the soldiers fought differently. Stronger, faster, one by one. Humans who had been near plasma strikes began to react. A young pilot caught a blade midair and shattered it with his hand. Another soldier moved faster than any human had recorded before. Their skin shimmered, not like metal, but like something ancient reawakening from sleep. Milo hid behind a console, watching it all unfold. "We're turning into them," he whispered. Reyna corrected him. "No, we're turning into what we were meant to be, and that scares them." Dr. Kess activated a display showing older Earth data hidden files, passed through generations. She pointed to symbols carved in DNA patterns. The same symbols appeared in ruins across old galaxies. The same symbols the Kohler feared, thousands of years ago. She explained, the galaxy faced something they called the flame-burn beings that didn't die, only adapted. Every time they were attacked, they grew stronger. They couldn't be ruled, so they were hunted, burned, forgotten. Reyna frowned. And now, we're their descendants? Not exactly, Kess said. We're the seed, hidden in plain sight. Earth wasn't just left alone because it was weak. It was quarantined. Reyna's blood went cold. Everything made sense now. Why Earth had no contact until recently. Why aliens avoided full contact. Why their first greeting came as a war. They weren't afraid of humanity's weapons or armies. They were afraid of waking up the fire dot in a lower hallway. A young woman was cornered by two alien warriors. She screamed, but instead of running, her body moved on its own. Her fingers caught one of the blades, her leg twisted mid-air, and within seconds, both enemies lay broken. She stood there, panting, confused. Her eyes shimmered. She had never trained a day in her life. The shift had begun. Reyna turned to her team. Seal this lab. No more signals in or out. From now on, we don't trust anything outside this base, not even Earth Command. Melo looked shocked. You think they know? Reyna didn't answer directly. She just said, someone buried this truth a long time ago. And now, the entire galaxy is trying to erase us before we figure out who we really are. The war had changed. This wasn't about land politics or fear anymore. This was about a secret locked in every human cell, something older than the stars. And someone out there would do anything to stop it from rising again. Earth Command sent silence in return. Reyna's emergency call went out twice. Each time no reply. It wasn't a signal jam. It wasn't interference. Someone had heard and chosen not to answer. Dr. Kess stood near the lab monitors, hands shaking. As more soldiers entered, injured and glowing faintly beneath their skin, it was happening faster now. Every wounded human who survived the alien energy changed within hours. The transformation didn't wait for permission. It followed a plan written deep inside. Milo watched one of the affected soldiers grip a steel pipe and twist it like rubber. They're not just healing, they're evolving on purpose. Reyna kept her eyes on the growing list of names. Dozens. Now too many to hide. She opened a secure file and began typing a report, but stopped halfway. Every word felt dangerous. Not because of the aliens, but because of who might read it back home. The underground lab doors closed with a loud thud. Outside, alien drones swept the hallways. They no longer attacked at random. They were searching, hunting, as if they were looking for one specific person. Kess whispered, "They know. They know someone here has reached the next stage." Reyna's voice dropped to a low command. "Find them before they do." In the shadows of a damaged barracks, a teenage girl named Lyra crouched beside a fallen medic. Her arms were burned, her uniform torn. She had never been trained for war. She was just a support worker. But when a drone burst through the wall, Lyra didn't scream. She moved too fast for a normal human in a single step. She closed the distance, ripped the drone's spear from its hand, and slammed it through its core. Sparks flew, the machine fell, and she collapsed beside it, gasping for air. A soldier ran in seconds later, eyes wide. "We found her." Reyna arrived minutes later. She looked at Lyra, then at the cracked remains of the drone. She had seen. Trained men failed to take down one of those. But this girl had done it without thinking. Not because she knew how, but because her body did. Kess ran tests on her blood and shook her head in disbelief. Her DNA isn't just reacting, it's awake. It's speaking to the rest of her cells, sending commands, building things new. Connections, new pathways. She's no longer just human. Reyna leaned closer. She's a key. Meanwhile, far above Mars, aboard the Kohler flagship, Commander Threx received a new update. A map of Earth's known genome data blinked in red. One file had been accessed in a hidden Archive 1, buried during the old solar wars. The humans found it. The second in command said. The one they called the pulse sequence. The blueprint of the Flameburn. Threx didn't blink. Then they'll be hunted, every last one. Send message to the core worlds. Tell the Council Earth has reached Code Black status. Even the Council won't approve another extinction order. His officer warned. They will when they see what's coming, Threx replied. Back in the lab, Reyna pulled Milo aside. I need you to leave the base. He looked shocked. Now? In the middle of this, she handed him a small black capsule. Inside this is Lyra's blood sample, unedited, pure. Take it to the Soul. Research bunker on Titan. Don't trust Earth Command. Don't use the main relays. Go quiet. If they catch you, they'll destroy it. Milo took the capsule with shaking hands. What's in her blood? Reyna stared out the window at the burning sky. Proof. Not just that we're changing, but that someone designed us for this long ago. And that design is waking up faster than they expected. As Milo left through a hidden exit tunnel, alien ships began pulling away from the base. Not fleeing, not defeated. Just watching, observing, waiting for something bigger. Kess's voice came through the lab speaker. They've stopped attacking. Why? Reyna answered coldly. Because they don't want to destroy us anymore. They want to see how far the spark goes. And then, maybe copy it. Lyra, still resting in the recovery room, whispered as if in a dream. There's more. Reyna leaned down. What do you mean? I saw something, Lyra whispered. Not a vision. A memory, but not mine. It came from the DNA like old. Voices, I saw a place of fire. Cities that floated above stars. A woman who turned entire planets into forests with a single scream. Kess gasped. She's seeing ancestral echoes. These aren't stories. These are encoded records from the original Flameburn. Reyna's voice dropped. Then that means this change isn't random. It's the return of something the galaxy tried to erase. And the galaxy was starting to panic. Because what lived inside human DNA wasn't just power, it was memory, design, and maybe even destiny. And the truth was beginning to unfold faster than anyone expected. Titans frozen. Sky burned with new lights. Milo had never flown a stealth ship before. But this one didn't need a pilot with skill, just someone desperate enough to fly through danger. He held the black capsule tightly in his jacket. Lyra's blood sample was still glowing faintly inside, pulsing like a heartbeat. Behind him, Earth Command channels were suddenly filled with noise. Not from allies, but from silence breaking. Ships all across the system were being rerouted. Satellites were going dark. And worst of all, new enemy fleets were coming, not just Kohler ships, but others Milo didn't even recognize. He whispered to himself. They called for help. Inside the Soul research bunker, deep below Titan's icy surface, Milo met a small group of scientists. All were marked as disavowed, officially dead, erased from records. But they worked faster than any lab he'd seen. They placed the blood sample under a device shaped like a silver star. One of the scientists turned to Milo with wide eyes. Where did you get this? From Mars, from her, Milo said. She's changing, and she's not the only one. The scientist didn't speak for a moment. Then he showed Milo the screen. Inside Lyra's DNA, something was spinning. A spiral inside the helix, tiny symbols forming patterns that weren't natural. Or random. These are coordinates, he whispered. Hidden inside a human's blood. Milo leaned closer. To what? Not to a place, the scientist said. To a weapon, or maybe a being. A sleeper locked somewhere far. and maybe Earth is the key to waking it. Back on Mars, Lyra stood in the lab, eyes glowing faintly gold now, skin warm even under the cold light. The machines around her buzzed with warnings, but her voice remained calm. She had seen things, felt voices from the deep. They left something behind, she said softly. The ones who came before, they weren't wiped out. They were sealed. Reyna stood nearby, listening carefully. Why? To protect the rest of the galaxy, Lyra said. Not from their enemies, but from their rage, because when the Flameburn are pushed, they burn everything. Dr. Kess worked at her console, connecting symbols from Lyra's DNA with ancient galactic scripts found in ruins across a dozen worlds. It all matched. These weren't mutations, they were messages, warnings, instructions. Reyna turned sharply. What happens if this reaches Earth's population? Kess hesitated. Then Earth won't be Earth anymore. In deep space, on the edge of the Kolar Dominion, the Grand Council gathered in secret. Holograms of leaders, old and powerful, floated in silence. One showed the footage of Lyra fighting on Mars. Another showed the DNA symbols Melo carried to Titan, and one final image, an old forgotten ruin buried under the oceans of Earth, pulsing again for the first time in 10,000 years. This was never just about Earth, one elder said. It was about what Earth was built to hide. Commander Threck stood in the center of the gathering. The pulse sequence is active. The human line has begun to awaken. We have days left. Maybe hours. If they connect the DNA to the sealed vault, the war will be over before it starts. A shadowy figure from the council spoke next. We cannot allow that. The Flameburn cannot be allowed to return. Reyna watched the skies from the Mars base. Alien fleets were no longer attacking, but gathering, like vultures waiting for something to die. She opened a link to the base engineers. I want launch codes prepared. We're sending something to Earth. If they want to erase us, we show the planet what they're afraid of. A young technician looked shocked. You want to reveal the pulse publicly? Reyna nodded. Yes, every human needs to know what's inside them. Melo stood inside the Titan bunker as the scientists prepared a signal boost. They were going to beam the DNA pattern, the coordinates, the symbols, everything, directly to Earth's unfiltered networks. Billions of people would see it. Milo whispered. Once it's out there, we can't take it back. Exactly, the scientist said. And that's why they'll come even harder. The machine clicked. The signal fired. Across the solar system, humans everywhere began to receive a strange sequence of numbers, symbols, and images. Some faintly felt dizzy. Others had strange dreams. A few collapsed and woke up stronger, faster, remembering things they had never learned. The change had begun. Back on Mars, Lyra stood at the observation deck, eyes locked on the stars. Her voice was quiet but sure. They'll come for us now. Reyna stepped beside her. Let them. Because now, the galaxy was no longer facing a silent planet. It was facing a species waking from its cage. One piece at a time, the Flameburn. Memory was rising from within, and the ones who buried it were starting to lose control. Earth was no longer quiet. Within hours of the pulse sequence release, strange symptoms began spreading. But they weren't diseases, they were awakenings. Humans all across the planet were changing, not all at once, but enough to notice. Enough to scare the watchers in orbit. Some people reported dreams that felt too real, like walking through ancient battles or watching stars be born. Others moved faster, healed faster, thought faster. A few even began speaking in languages no one had ever taught them. In a hidden city under the ice of Antarctica, a man lifted a massive steel beam after a mining accident trapped workers. His bones should have snapped. Instead, they strengthened as he moved. He didn't know how he did it, only that he had to. On the moon, During the small research mission, a young woman survived in vacuum longer than any suit could allow. Her blood froze, then melted again, and she got back up, eyes glowing faint blue as if the stars themselves had blessed her. The flame-burn signal was spreading, and no one could stop it. At Mars base, Reyna watched incoming reports. The alien fleets had stopped moving again, but this time it wasn't to regroup. It was fear. They had seen this before. Once, long ago. And it had nearly destroyed them. Dr. Kess adjusted the readings and turned to Reyna. It's accelerating. Every human exposed to the pulse shows a chance of activation, even unborn children. Reyna's jaw tightened. This was inside us. The whole time, and no one told us. They were too afraid, Kess replied. Not just of the power, but of who we were before. Reyna looked out at the stars. Then it's time we find out for ourselves. On Titan, Milo stood with the scientists at the bunker's edge, staring at a live hologram of Earth. New hotspots had formed, locations where ancient ruins were starting to activate. Energy bursts were rising from oceans, mountains, deserts. These weren't random places. These were vaults. Flame-burn vaults. Each vault was linked to memory and weapons. The coordinates in Lyra's DNA were real, said the lead scientist. And they're not just for one location, they're for many. Earth wasn't just a cage, it was a library. Milo whispered, then what's about to be unlocked? Before the answer came, warning lights blared. Alien drop pods entered Titan's atmosphere, dark and sharp like falling blades. The Kolar Dominion had tracked the signal. They had come to erase the proof. Reyna's voice crackled through a secured line. We'll hold them here. Get the second sample to Earth. Milo grabbed the backup capsule and ran for the escape sled, the bunker shaking behind him. As he launched, explosions rocked the ice. Behind him, the lab was gone. But the data remained alive in his hands, and soon, in Earth's core command. Back on Mars, Lyra stood in the central chamber of the old power core, surrounded by glowing runes and pulsing walls. She touched one of the symbols, and the ground vibrated. A voice echoed not from speakers, but from her own blood. Flame-burn kin detected. Awakening protocol engaged. Dr. Kess fell to her knees. It's speaking ... through her. Reyna raised her weapon as the base doors shook. The enemy was coming, but something had changed. The sky above the base began to crack, not break, but shift. A ring of light formed above the horizon. A construct, an ancient satellite hidden for ages, now alive. Lyra's voice rang clear and calm. The first guardian is awake. The ring in the sky turned, then began to fire. Beams of light cut through the darkness, striking enemy ships with pinpoint force. One by one, alien vessels exploded before they could land. Not all, but enough. The aliens hesitated. They were no longer facing a sleeping planet. They were facing its memory. And memory had teeth. Commander Threx watched from orbit, face pale. It started. The systems are waking. The Guardians are returning. His second-in-command shook his head. This wasn't supposed to happen for another 1,000 years. Threx replied coldly. Someone pushed the timeline. Someone forced the evolution. And Earth wasn't done yet. On every continent, more vaults began to glow. Humans all over. The world stopped and looked up, their blood humming with something they didn't understand, but could feel. A call, a promise, a warning. The Flameburn weren't just returning. They were remembering what had been stolen from them. And now, for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy would remember it too. The skies over Earth turned gold. Not fire, not ash, but energy pure and old. From orbit, it looked like a storm of light rising from the planet's crust. But it wasn't a weapon. It was memory, finally unlocked. Ancient flame-burn technology buried deep beneath oceans, mountains, and cities had heard the call, and they had responded. In the Amazon, Rivers glowed as silver trees grew overnight. In Africa, a desert cracked open to reveal a shining tower with no entrance, only a humming sound like a heartbeat. Across Antarctica, frozen symbols lit up the snow. Pulsing in time with Lyra's breath on Mars, she stood at the control altar, arms raised, her body glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The energy didn't hurt her. It welcomed her. She wasn't just a receiver anymore. She was a key. Dr. Kess recorded the readings, barely able to speak. She's connected to every vault, every site. She's in all of them at once. Reyna stood at the window, watching the alien fleets in orbit break apart. They weren't defeated by weapons or ships. They were retreating because they understood. They had already lost. On Titan, Milo reached Earth Command with the second capsule. He expected to be arrested, silenced, but instead, something strange happened. One by one, the generals stood up. Silent, staring at the signal the capsule unlocked. It wasn't just Lyra's DNA dot, it was every human's. The pulse sequence had finished activating. The symbols now formed a full pattern, like the final page of a book no one knew they were reading. At the center of it all was an instruction. A message from the original Flameburn. We survived inside you. Now rise. Across Earth, people fell to their knees overwhelmed, crying, laughing, some glowing with soft colors under their skin. Each one was different. Each one reacting in their own way. But all felt the same truth. They were never just human. They were something more. On Mars, Lyra looked up as the skies parted. A ship descended, unlike any ever seen. Massive, elegant, alive. It didn't come from the Kohler. It came from before the Kohler ever existed. A remnant of the old age. The ship opened its hull, and a voice rang out, not in sound but in thought. You have awakened the seed. The line is unbroken. Earth has returned, Reyna whispered. Return to what? To itself, Lyra said calmly. We were scattered, broken, hidden in dust and fear. But now we are one again. The Kohler. Dominion sent one final message to the Galactic Council. It contained only one line. Earth is Flameburn. Stand down or be erased. The Council did not reply. Instead, they closed all open channels. They recalled their fleets. They activated old defensive rings on their homeworlds. Because now they understood. The humans were not a mistake. They were a countdown. And the countdown had reached zero. Back on Earth, cities began to change, not destroyed, but reshaped by the awakened systems. Old buildings repaired themselves. Water flowed where there was drought. Clean energy bloomed like wildflowers. Humans didn't become monsters. They didn't become gods. They became what they were always meant to be. Carriers of balance. Guardians of memory. Warriors of survival. Reyna walked beside Lyra as the Mars base slowly rebuilt itself with strange materials. What happens now? Lyra looked to the stars. We rebuild, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to remember who we were and protect what we almost lost. Milo's voice came through the come, full of emotion. Earth Command just gave control of the global net to the new systems. We're free. No more hiding. Reyna smiled slightly. Then it's time to speak. That night, for the first time in history, a message from Earth was broadcast across every corner of the galaxy. No secrets, no fear. Just one simple sentence. We are Flameburn, and we remember. There was no reply. But in the cold reaches of space, the Watchers turned away. Not out of mercy, but out of fear. They would not touch Earth again. Not because of weapons, but because of what lived in its blood. The galaxy once tried to erase the Flameburn. Instead, it had preserved them. And now, the universe would change forever, because the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was not a weapon, or a warlord, or a world. It was a human finally realizing what they truly were.